Hello and welcome to the 2022 version of the Valk Guide. Post-Rework, everything is going to be fully up to date, and I just want you guys to know, once again, just like the rest of the videos, everything in this video is based off of my opinion. In a second here I'll be going over some background about me, who I am to the class, and who I am to you guys, and hopefully you can find good information in this video. Once again, socials are down below in the link tree. You can definitely peep anything out that you like, community Discord, the Twitch channel. And once again, thank you guys. So, just to cover a little bit about me, I am Amouu. I've been playing the class for about a little over 5 years now. Ever since I started, it's been primarily Awakening Valk. I've made a few guides in the past that have attracted a fair amount of attention, and I have you guys to thank for that. This guide is going to be one of those with the most up-to-date information that I can provide. Many different methods of doing things like movement, PvE, PvP, different types of combos. So the timestamps are in the previous section in the introduction, and I hope you guys again enjoy the video. And if you have any questions regarding any of this stuff, the link tree is down below, and you can feel free to join the Discord and ask any questions you might have, because I'm always around, my moderators are usually always around, and the rest of the community is really helpful. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you. Okay, so just to go over the state of the class, as it sits, post-rework, and this is about 2 weeks post-rework. In PvE, the class is a very solid pick. It's still relatively high APM, which might hurt your hands after a little while, but there's ways around that and making it a relatively relaxed PvE class. In PvP, I think it's a bit more difficult than it used to be, and I think that's mainly just because of some small mechanical changes. Overall, I want to say the class is pretty well versed in PvP. The damage increase was nice. We still have a relatively unsafe movement, which is okay, because there's workarounds for that, but overall, rework in PvP, harder, but definitely better. And I think if you're debating giving the class a try, current day, 2022, it's January 2nd right now, it's a great choice. Give it some time, because the learning curve is pretty high, but once you get past that point, I think most players will find that they actually do like this class quite a bit. So one of the most requested things I've probably been asked the most is skill rotation and skills that can be used for filler. In this section we're going to be covering everything like PvE related, so like skill window, how many skill points you need, my skill rotation, filler skills, add-ons, all that kind of stuff. Let's get right into it. Alright, so first we're going to cover the skill rotation, which is pretty basic. You do not need to go into pre-awakening at all anymore. You don't need to crit buff, as surprising as that may sound. All the skill rotation now involves is all awakening skills and just damage. That's all. You can pre-buff if you like with crit damage or crit buff like spear, or now we have sacrum for the 80%, but neither of those are necessary, and this is the skill rotation here. You DP debuff with purification, Hasti for filler damage, blitz stab, F jump, new skill, and then shift right click. That's the entire skill rotation. For filler skills, I'd probably recommend things like Divina Impulsa, which is shift Q or hotbar, Terra Sancta, and Hasti are your 3 primary filler skills. You shouldn't really need to stray off too much from the main skill rotation, just because all of the main skills have really low cooldown, all the skills have really high damage, and should you need to add any more filler, the filler skills are decently high damage, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. Even at AP values like 269 or 273 Kutum, you can go to Orc Camp and you should be able to pretty much one combo the mobs with the lights on and no weapon, with the main skill rotation. In any case, if you can't, you're welcome to use any of the 3 filler skills, which should all finish off the pack for you. But once again, that skill rotation is Purification, Hasti, Blitz, F jump, new skill, shift R&B. That's all. And a very pleasant surprise to a lot of you, with the reworks, they've also made it to where, since we only stay in Awakening, the skill points required to play the class have gone way down. All you need is around 1600 skill points, which is a little past the soft cap, so after the point where you stop getting 3 skill points per level, it's only like 100 skill points past that. All you need is 1600, which is very doable, and at least level 60 so you can max out all your skills. Take everything in the Awakening tree and max it out. For PvE, you want to take Core Hasti because getting CC'd during your primary opening filler skill is pretty annoying. And all you need in the pre-Awakening tree is Divine Power 4, maxed out Heaven's Echo, maxed out Spear if you want. I take maxed out Righteous Charge, primarily because the movement distance is really high, and it's nice when you chain it with Shield Chase. Take out the maxed out heal, or take maxed out heal, take the maxed out Shield Chase, and your passives. Not very much in the pre-Awakening tree at all. Take everything in Awakening, and take your Rabams. You don't need the third Rabam. With these skills, it'll take you about 1550 or 1600 skill points, and get your Valk to level 60, and you can start doing endgame PvE with way less skill points than it took before, because before it took you at least 1800. So now this is, you know, a very nice change. Players are able to get into PvEing on the Valk much easier, especially considering skill points are pretty annoying to farm, to say the least. So hopefully you guys can find this skill build useful. If you think you need anything more, definitely take what you need. Obviously you're going to keep taking more skills as you need, but if you want to just start making an alt Valk, or you know, if you're looking to play the class late game PvE, this is it. 1600 skill points. Okay, so I know I might get called a casual for this, but yes, these are my add-ons for PvE. I know. I say I make it called a casual because I don't switch between PvE and PvP add-ons. I make them all in one. It may not be the most efficient route, but it works for me. These are my add-ons. If you like to copy them one for one, you can. Most of these add-ons are prioritized towards PvP, but the only PvE add-on I have, and the only one I feel I really need, is Hasti, which is a skill I don't really use very much in PvP anyways. So, if you want to copy my add-ons, go for it. But to finish up the PvE section, yes, this is it. We're going to move on to the general skill tree section now, and what skills you should and shouldn't take. Okay, so in the skill tree we're going to cover pretty much everything. I'll cover the Rabam Skills and Bond Skills later, which are core skills. For the general skill tree though, I personally lock Charging Slash. These skills are not really important, so you can take them if you want. Max out SOJ, max out Sharp Light. I take Ultimate Sharp Light primarily because it allows you to cancel certain skills with Sharp Light. Divine Power, Ultimate Divine Power. The damage from Ultimate Divine Power isn't bad. Heaven's Echo, obviously for the DP and accuracy buff. Celestial Spear, Ultimate as well for the second spear. Judgment of Light, completely optional, you don't really need it, and it's not really a useful skill as of right now. Remember, this video is being made 2 weeks post-rework, so things could change. Righteous Charge, I told you earlier I take this for more distance, but you don't need to. Also, if you take the lower levels, you won't do the stabbing animation when you approach your target with Righteous Charge. However, I just take max, because I don't mind the stabbing animation, because I usually don't get that anyways. And the distance is higher. Shining Dash, you don't really need it, but it's useful for later on. Breath of Elion, that's our heal, and it now gives a 3-second SA buff. It gives you 3 seconds of SA when you use it in Awakening. It may also do it in Pre-Awakening. Flying Kick, I take that for kick cancels. Grab, obviously it's a grab. Counter, max it out. I don't take any of the Shield Strike skills. Personally, you might want to lock this. I don't really mind it very much, because I never really hit R&B raw anyways. Take Shield Throw all the way up, Spinning Shield. You need to take Absolute Just Counter, because it allows you to do animation cancels over a regular level 3 Just Counter, Sharp counter, you want that. I take Skyward Strike all the way up because absolute, just like just counter, it allows you to do animation cancels out of different abilities with it. Shield Chase all the way up. Elion's Blessing, that's our PA. You do need that. Passives all the way up as high as you can. Awakening Tree, take everything. And in PvP, you want to take the F jump. This was debatable before, but with the recent change from the rework of F jump now being a knockdown on hits as opposed to a bound, I don't really think it's up for much debate. Obviously, you guys can take what you want. I know a few Valks that still do take core Hasti, and neither of these two are bad. Personally, I just think F jump is the better choice. I don't really think anything else here is worth taking anymore. I know this was also up for debate back in the day, but not so much nowadays. It's either F jump or Hasti. Alright, as far as Rabam skills go, this is very debatable and a lot of people switch between these different Rabams. For level 58, Divine Judgment of Light might be the best one, but you can try this one. I've never personally tried this one, so I wouldn't give it much thought. Divine JOL has a chance to down smash, so you can use it to potentially CC reset someone. For Heaven's Echo 3, Celestial Spear, you get Celestial Smite. Celestial Smite is a damage Rabam as opposed to Celestial Cry, which is a heal. This is very good if you prefer to play more of a support role. Celestial Smite is very good if you choose to go for big damage. For the 57 Rabam, I personally take Divine Slam because it's an extra forward guard and a nice swap to pre-awaken. Divine Descent is very, very useful in Tier 1 Node Wars. Primarily Tier 1 Node Wars and Cap Siege actually. Just because of the special damage modifier, special attack damage modifier, which can be used right before you ult. That's an additional 5% special attack damage to your ult if you want, and it's also SA while on cast. I've seen people take both Celestial Cry and Divine Descent to fit more their playstyle, but obviously all four of these Rabams are very good choices. I don't know if 58 is very debatable, but this one's okay and not very useful. Alright, so now to cover Hotbar skills. Personally, I think Divina Impulsa is a must-have on Hotbar because certain interactions with certain skills in Awakening will cause you to only use the second hit of Divina after certain skills. I'm pretty sure some of those skills are like Blitz Stab and Promptness. You'll only use the second hit of Divina after those. And if you want a longer forward guard and more damage, you'll need to have it on Hotbar so that you can still use Promptness, for example, and get off both hits of Divina as opposed to just one. Because if you use Promptness and then Shift Q, you'll only get one hit. But if you Promptness and then Hotbar Divina, you can get both hits out of it, more damage and more forward guard. So I think that's a must-have. Divine Judgment of Light, this can be swapped out accordingly with Elvia Torn Wing depending on what you're doing, because obviously you're not going to use this in PvE. Never hotbar your Rabams, literally ever. I promise you it's not worth it. It's just my habit. It's something I'm not going to cut, and I know it's not good. I'm sorry. But if you want to use your Rabams, use them from Shift X and Shift Z. Don't hotbar them. A grab you no longer need on hotbar. I personally don't use it from hotbar anymore either, because I mostly use it in pre-awakening. This is just an old keybind that I'm probably not going to change again. Elion's Blessing, important to have. I have this on middle click. Personally, it's PA, and you could use it from both pre-awakening and awakening. Super important, just in case you ever need that extra super armor, or the extra resists, or the extra damage reduction, anything. E-buff, you need this on hotbar now, because Noble Spirit, which is our e-buff, can no longer be used by pressing E. They made a change recently with the reworks where if you press E in Awakening, you'll use Grab instead. And that's why Grab in Awakening isn't very useful from hotbar anymore. Just counter. You can use this as a wake up CC, or spam this while you're in the get up animation, so you can have instant forward guard as soon as you get up. Super, super useful. Trust me, you want this on hotbar. Lucem Flow. This used to be an evasion debuff, not anymore. It's mainly just used for KD now, which still isn't bad, considering you can use this alone without having to use all of RMB first. RMB is Sacrum Ferret. It's our right-click awakening skill. You can use this without having to use all of Sacrum Ferret, so make sure you hotbar this as well. Super important. Shining Dash, very niche, but you can use it with Lancia, and it can primarily be used to simulate the shield charge that warriors have when they W right click and they move it backwards. If they turn their camera fast enough, you can use it similar to that. It's a very niche usage though, you don't really need it on Hotbar, but I personally have it because that one niche use, you know, comes in handy every so often. As far as my Hotbar skills go, that's pretty much everything. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 necessary skills. Maybe 6 if you don't count Divine JOL. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and cover stats, which is pretty much this P window here. But I want to note some very important things about these stats for Valk. And, you know, sure, this is pretty much me just reiterating things that have already been said before, but I want to make sure these things are well known because these stats are pretty important for Valk. Okay, starting off with casting speed. Obviously, the 5 casting speed is very important. This is pretty much the bread and butter for Valk, like hands down. However, if you have attack casting speed add-ons, these add-ons will always go over the cap. The add-ons, the percent-based add-ons will always go over the cap. So, if you're already at 5 casting speed, and you have a 7% casting speed add-on like I do on my Hasti, it will allow you to go faster than what is stated in your P window, your character profile window. This is super important because this allows you to get off more attacks, do more damage much faster. Since BDO is the way it is, the more frames you have, the faster you're able to do things, the more damage you can do. The same thing applies for movement speed. Whenever you're in Awakening and you use the A or D left click, you'll get this 20% movement speed buff, which is super important. And you can reset that as many times as you want, that buff. Same thing applies for crit. This is why a Valk needs 0 crit. So if you go into your pre-awakening tree, scroll down and look at Celestial Spear. With proper add-ons, Celestial Spear will give you 100% crit, and this same add-on always applies to Celestial Smite too. That being said, these buffs last long enough and the cooldown is short enough where you should be able to maintain 100% crit on Valk all the time. Whenever you're doing any kind of meaningful damage, you want to make sure you're crit buffed. So if you're using Terra Sancta, if you're using Blitz, Hasti, F-Jump, Divina Volt, anything, you want to make sure you have this crit buff up. Because that is what allows us to avoid running crit crystals or spirit perfume elixirs that give us max crit. Other classes like Witch or Wizard, they might need those things because they don't have an ability that gives them 100% crit. So make sure you remember that these stats can be overcapped as long as you have the proper add-ons and the proper skill rotation to overcap them. Movement speed, attack speed on hit from Hasti, or anything else you have attack speed on, and crit. Alright, so one quick don't, like a do not, never do, is never use Vindicta. As of right now, immediately post rework, this skill is very useless. It'll lock your animation, and if we could lock it, I would say lock it, but unfortunately it's not a choice. This is what the skill looks like. It's just a simple forward shield hit, which doesn't have a CC, and has a negligible debuff, so as far as actually using it, you might use this when you accidentally miss input, but that's really it. Avoid using this skill. Another good do not is to be sure you're never walking around with your block down. People might call you a crab walker. I've heard a lot of different terms for this, but you want to make sure you're always walking around with your block up. The only time your block is not up if you're going from location to location with your guild in the middle of the ball, completely safe, and you know, obviously at that point you're probably just shift sprinting, so you wouldn't have your weapons out anyways. More often than not though, if you're ever walking around with your block down, just like this, or even in pre-awakening, you'll usually get caught by something, you know, flying at you randomly, or you know, some random skill getting thrown off in any direction, which obviously wouldn't be good. So be sure you're never walking with your block down. Another important one is to make sure you're not using the iframe in pre-awakening improperly. Again, it's still not a skill that's listed in our skill tree anywhere, but it's when you press A or D right click in pre-awakening, you'll see that there's a short moment of iframe in that skill, and you can do it one of a few ways. You can do hold A, tap right click, or you can hold right click, tap left click. I would suggest holding either directional key, A or D, and then holding them both at once to try and close the gap as small as possible. The lower ping you are, obviously this is going to be better for you, but if you have higher ping, this can still serve to be useful as long as you use it in the right situations. Always hold left and right click when you do it. Okay, some of these things are going to be a repeat from the previous video, but I would like to reiterate them here because they're relatively important. Since we're not Succession, you cannot do Shield Chase Sharp Light. Try to keep that in mind because I know Succession uses that as a, you know, initial CC or attempted catch quite a bit. We can't do Shield Chase Sharp Light. We have that massive delay between the two skills that just won't let it flow smoothly. Hopefully we see a change to this in the future because it would be nice to have this in the Awakening kit. Just a simple Shield Chase Sharp Light for the knockdown. But as of right now, don't do that. If you're used to playing Succession and you want to try Awakening, do not do that. It'll get you locked animation, it takes a while to do, and it's also just not safe. So for these, I'm pretty much going to speed run most of these, but these are things that I did state before. However, I do want them to be in this video. We're going to go quick. The first one I want you guys to know is very important, and you can do this as soon as you promptness into Awakening. Doesn't matter what you do prior, but you can speedcast Terra Sancta. So let's say you want to smite, promptness, Terra. If you were to do that normally, smite and promptness without the Q cancel, which is the speedcast for Terra, would have came out way slower. In 3 seconds I'll show you what it looks like normally. The delay between promptness and Terra Sancta was massive there. The way you pull that off is, doesn't matter what you're doing, you go into promptness, immediately block. That's it. So you can promptness, block, Terra Sancta. The block going up is an animation cancel for the wind up of Terra Sancta. Remember that, that's very important. That'll help you squeeze in more damage to combos per se in large scale, or if you want to squeeze in more damage for a down smash reset, 1v1 combo, whatever it is, the Q cast on Terra Sancta, or the Q cancel, I'm sorry, is very, very important. If you missed it, it's here again. Lucem Fluxum on your hotbar. Usually, the way you would normally use this is by holding right click, and it would be the last hit of your Sacrum Ferret. Because Sacrum Ferret itself is only a 3-hit ability. The last hit that you saw at the end, the 4th hit, was actually Lucem Fluxum. In a patch about a year ago at this point, they allowed us to take Lucem Fluxum out of that 4-hit combo and use it alone. So instead of having to do the first 3 hits, which is stiffen, damage, float, you could just go straight into the KD from Lucem Fluxum as a standalone skill. So I tend to get a lot of complaints from newer Valks saying that when they backdash more than once, they go into pre-awakening, or if they dash any direction but forward, they go into pre-awakening. There's a way to prevent that. By backdashing and using Deathline Chase backwards, you can actually just hold left click while you're Deathline chasing backwards, and you stay in Awakening. It does make the distance significantly shorter, and it also takes up a decent amount of stamina, but if you really want to stay in Awakening for any reason, you could Shift S left click. And you can see how quickly that burns through stamina. But that is one way you could stay in Awakening, by also dashing backwards more than once. On a very similar note, a lot of people also mention they have issues with the unit collision while trying to move around. If you want to avoid having any kind of unit collision, you can shield chase through your target any direction as long as it's not forwards. And the same thing also applies with backwards movement on Deathline Chase. It allows you to phase through targets as much as you need to. On that same note, while you F-jump, or when you land, you have a super long lingering super armor. On top of that, Divinavolt can be used at any time during this SA linger. So if you use the F-jump, and you want to hold SA for as long as possible, hold, you can flow as late as you want. And that flow still does the same damage it would have done if you used it immediately. The same exact method applies to Hasti Lingering, which is our WF in Awakening. Sorry for the UI, I'm not sure why the UI is sticky, but WF in Awakening also has a long lingering super armor if you want to ride out that animation and flow into other lingering super armors, which you could pretty much rotate as long as you need to stay safe. You get the idea. But lingering super armors are a big deal. So remember to linger the WF super armor if you ever need to, mostly in 1v1 scenarios. Alright, this one may seem like a no-brainer to many of you, but you'd be surprised at how many new Valks actually may not know this. You can use either Celestial Smite or Celestial Spear and go directly into an F-jump. It is as simple as it sounds too. So you S-E-F, that's all. The same thing applies, it would just be Shift-X-F if you wanted to do Celestial Smite instead. Because don't be like me and don't hotbar it, but you can do both. This next one is something I've been doing for quite a few years, and I'm sure there was many Valks doing it before I was, but I coined it as the Ghost Float a couple years ago. So initially, all you need to do is do any kind of dash towards your opponent, preferably towards their back, and when you get to their back you'll do counter. That's left click in pre-awakening, which is why I have the skill maxed out to absolute. I used to run an add-on on this skill, but I no longer run the add-on because there's better skills to have add-ons on. But I still use this technique quite a bit. So in this case I will do shield chase, counter, A or D iframe. And I'll do it in full speed so you can see how it looks. That's how it would normally look in most circumstances if you're trying to get it off as fast as you can. So you can do Ghost Float into iframe into promptness, which would then be SA into SA, because you would go into promptness Q block. And if you were to get the follow-up CC, or if you were to get the float, you could follow up with like a Lucem Fluxum flow like we just talked about. This next one may not be as useful in the current day and age, but I still find it useful in some situations in PvE if I really need to squeeze out that last little bit of damage. Because shield throw is still relatively high damage in PvE, if you have nothing else on cooldown, or off of cooldown, sorry. You'll do shield throw into flying kick into shield throw again, which is why I have absolute flying kick maxed out, and that's the only kick I have. In full speed, you would normally do spear shield throw, flying kick shield throw, and if you didn't hotbar your smite like me, you could do Shift X shield throw again. Again, it looks like this. And it allows you to do the spinning shield flow for much longer than you normally would be able to with just spears alone. Pretty useful. Alright, so I want to start off with some very basic movement to get you guys started off, because playing Valk early on doesn't involve lots of animation cancels, it just involves mostly learning your movement, and everything starts with the basics. So, obviously you have Shift W, which is Deathline Chase. You could spam that skill, it's not bad. Going from pack to pack or group to group. Or spot A to B in large scale. But there's other things you could do as well, which are also a little bit faster and a little bit more stamina efficient. The second method I would probably suggest is left click space Q. It is as simple as it sounds, and here's how it works. You're standing idle, you can left click, space, then Q, then left click again. The reason Vindicta didn't proc right there is because the animation of putting up your shield doesn't actually count as being in guard yet, or on guard. So you have a little while putting your shield up to actually left click out of it. And that's why left click space Q actually works. You could do that as many times as you want, as fast as you can, and eventually you'll get used to it. It's a little bit higher APM than most would like for just movement, but it's a bit faster and a little bit more stamina efficient than Deathline Chase is. The last method is literally right click space. You just hold right click in space. That's it. This is okay in PvE. It's especially good farming lower level areas like Poly Forest or Shira Ruins or Blood Wolves. And it's not bad. It's, as you can see, it's really stamina efficient. This is one of 3 ways you can move around at the start until you get a feel for some of the more advanced techniques, and you can start weaving in different kinds of movement into your rotation. Now we creep into some of the more nitty-gritty stuff. The first one I want to show you excuse me, is really useful because it actually helps you move across like fights much easier, considering Promptness now has super armor when it's off cooldown. Here. This one is simply just WF spacebar. So Hasti Lingering into Promptness. You see at the very end of the Hasti, I used Promptness for the last little burst of movement. This isn't bad, and it's actually really good in a lot of cases for getting across like fights or moving across the battlefield safely, however you need to do it. All you need to do is just hold spacebar as soon as you cast Promptness, and that's all. This next one is really common, and you'll start seeing this a lot more as you start to see more Valks in the game. Basically, it's called the jump slash cancel, which you essentially just, while you're in Awakening Guard, you C-swap, left click in space, space again, and then Q. This can also be done by just holding space throughout the entire animation, but personally I don't like to hold space just in case I have to do something else after a single jump slash. This is good for positioning yourself amongst the fight very quickly while you need your weapons out, just in case you need to get out real quick, or just in case you need to hard engage with a shield chase, you know, into a grab or something like you're peeling for an ally. It's great for micro positioning, and it can be used pretty much any time. It's also known as zero stamina movement, so you can use it while pretty much staying at 100 stamina the entire time, and it also costs no mana. Once again, the way it's done is in Awakening Guard, you C-swap, hold left click in space, tap space again, and then Q. Rinse and repeat. The whole process repeats until you eventually just get where you need to be. Practice this quite a bit because it comes in great handy, trust me. You'll be using this a lot once you get more comfortable with the Valk's movement, you know, making your way across fights or repositioning for a small reposition, or just trying to move with no stamina cost. This can be chained with many other methods of movement like Righteous Charge, Shield Chase, Promptness, and go right back into it. However you want to go about it. But now I'll show you like a normal movement rotation for myself. So this is what a normal movement rotation for me might look like, and you'll start to develop habits doing this the longer you play the class and the more comfortable you get with the movement. Something like that. And you can use different methods of movement like Righteous Charging, Shield Chasing, the no stamina movement, which is the jump slash cancel, to keep your stamina bar afloat while you're moving across the battlefield or moving across, like, you know, a 1v1 arena or 3v3 arena even. All this movement can be chained together in different meaningful ways, including, you know, like PvE even. So just make sure you spend the most time possible that you can while you're actively playing the class, learning movement. That's single-handedly the most important thing about this class, and it will take you very far, trust me. So I guess the last movement technique that I would like to consider advanced that I want to talk about is Shining Dash. So Shining Dash is actually a forward guard while you're moving, which means during this animation, it's a forward guard. What you can do with that animation is, as soon as it starts, your character is facing forward, but if you have mouse to move on, use mouse to move. If you turn this on, you can actually turn the skill around by clicking behind you as soon as it starts, but it is still technically moving your character forward. So your character will slide backwards with a forward guard in the previous direction you were just facing, and it looks something like this. You saw how my character hadn't fully turned around, but the frontal guard icon was still there, and I was still moving backwards. This is a very similar mechanic to how warriors are able to turn their shield charge, whatever their skill is called. I'm pretty sure it's called shield charge in pre-awakening. Their W right click, they're able to turn that around if they start the skill and then turn their camera around fast enough, and it's still forward guard in the direction they were previously facing, but they're moving backwards. A very similar mechanic. For us, luckily we don't have to turn around, but it's a bit harder to pull off. So if you can get used to doing that, it can be applied in some very, very niche situations. Okay, so for this final section, I've got my buddy Comp. He also streams on Twitch at Complicated Gaming. Definitely check him out. But I'll be using him for a test dummy to display two very basic combos to you guys that you can pull off with two different catches. Here we go. So all I did for that catch was F jump knockdown. With the core from the F jump bond, you are able to knock people down when you land on them. I did core F jump into purification DP debuff, Hasti for filler damage, blitz stab for the KD re-CC, and Terra Sancta as the finishing skill. Again, I did it in a slightly different order that time, but the same method still applies. You want to do some sort of filler damage, like even Promptness Divina, before you use your re-CC, since knockdowns last for so long. And that was off of a knockdown catch. Now we'll display a grab catch. So that combo may not have been the most simple, but it is a very efficient combo that does a good amount of damage off of a grab catch. So what I did, if I don't get resisted, I'll show you. I used grab, promptness, Divina Impulsa, Hasti into blitz stab, celestial smite, Terra Sancta, shield chase again, spear, shield throw. I'll put the key inputs somewhere on the screen so you can see exactly how to do that combo. And that's just one of many, many, many different variations of combos that you can do. Of course, read the skills, learn what everything does, and mess around with different skill orders and whatever you can to try and figure out new combos, because there's new combos being discovered all the time and it's so cool to see. That's going to wrap it up for the combo section. I just wanted to give you guys one or two combos to work with, just so you have a decent basis with one basic combo and one semi-advanced combo that'll lead you into eventually discovering your own. Okay, so this last little bit is definitely not something to disregard. If you know how to large scale, then you know how to large scale. It's pretty generalized on most classes in BDO. But you can't really play Valk like a frontline, you know, beefy beat 'em up class. It's more of an outskirts fighter. It's more of like an outside ball fighter. Leave the ball fighting for classes like, you know, Striker, Guardian, Awakening, and casters that can dive. You generally want to be the one to stick around the outside of the ball. So let's say my ping right now, my current auto path, is the enemy ball. You don't really ever want to ball to ball. Most of the time you'll just get blown up way too quickly, especially in the current meta. But I assume it's going to stay this way for a while. And either way, like, even if the meta does change, you don't really want to be in the ball too much. You want to stick around the outsides, try to pick off, you know, other flex classes, because you're better off being played as an assassin as opposed to a frontline class. You stand a much better chance against 3 ninjas, a DK, and a Sork with the rest of your flex team versus Striker ults, Guardian shift Qs, meteors, lightning, all that kind of stuff in the main ball. So stick around the outsides, look for picks, and try to peel and heal as many of your allies as you can while still progressively move forward towards the actual fight with the rest of your ball, until eventually you can just wrap up the fight where you should have initially been, inside the ball with the rest of your guild. Your goal is never, ever ball fight on Val. Now, if the situation really calls for it, yeah, sure, you can do it, but it's something you should try to avoid most of the time, just because it won't really result, you know, you won't really end up living very long if you do. Overall though, I think the class is a much better assassin or a much better backline flank class than it is an actual ball-to-ball class. Well, you made it to the end. Thank you so much, honestly. Remember, you can check me out on Twitch. I've been live a lot recently, post-rework, just because I'm so excited to finally be able to play my class again in PvE and PvP more efficiently. It's a great feeling. Anybody that's made it to this point in the video, thank you a million times over. If you have any questions regarding anything that I mentioned in this video, anything at all, definitely join the Discord. The link for it is in the link tree below. You can also check out the rest of my socials there. And be sure you go back, you know, come back to this video for reference and continue to refresh on things like movement or, you know, building combos, all those different kinds of things, because that all leads into very fun gameplay. Once you spend a bit more time on the class and dedicate some time to learning it, it's a lot of fun. It's really worth it. As of right now, the Discord, the community Discord, I have a channel open for community montage, which I'm going to be pulling clips from you guys, and myself included, and making that into a Valkyrie montage, period. Succession or Awakening. Anybody can submit clips, just be sure, you know, it's your best quality clip, literally and like gameplay wise, just so we can put out some sick content. On that note, I don't know what else to say. You guys are amazing. Thank you for sticking with me all this time, and let's continue to do some crazy things with the class. Honestly, I will see you guys next time. I'm probably going to do PvE videos pretty soon and finish up the community montage. Yeah, that's really it. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much. Peace, peace.